Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Jabs, and I'm the Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy at AUMA, and I work with the Infrastructure and Energy Committee. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar related to the Community Emergency Management Program, or CEMP. The CEMP was built to automate the process of emergency planning, self-assessment, and developing a community emergency plan for your communities. Before I introduce our guest speaker and we get started with the presentation, I want to make sure that everyone is clear on how this webinar will work and the process through which you can participate. Throughout the session, only the presenters will have the ability to communicate verbally. However, everyone here has the ability to add a comment or to ask questions via the chat box in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. You can type in the question or comment, and that information will appear in the text box on everyone's screen so that everyone can see the questions being posed. Although you can type your questions at any time throughout the session, we'll actually only address those questions at the end of the session. Also, if you encounter any sound or other technical difficulties along the way, you can type in those issues as well, and we will have staff monitoring the chat box as we go along. Please note that the webinar is being recorded, and a copy of the webinar will be available online next week. And if you'd like to receive a copy of today's presentation, please contact webinar at webinar@auma.ca, and it will be made available to you. I hope that's clear for everyone. Before we get going into a detailed look at the CEMP tool, I wanted to provide a quick mention of the emergency management and disaster recovery resources on AUMA's website. This slide shows you where you can locate the resources by going to AUMA, Advocacy Services, and Emergency Management and Disaster Response. This webpage brings together resources that focus on the goal of creating safe, secure, and disaster-resilient communities. It explains the 4 core elements of emergency management. Prevention and mitigation links to Alberta's mitigation efforts. Emergency preparedness provides information about the CEMP program online tool that Daryl will be focusing on today to enable emergency management planning and response at both the individual, municipality, and regional levels. Resources include municipal disaster preparedness, personal and family emergency planning, and training opportunities that are available in the province. There's a section on disaster response that links to the Alberta Emergency Management Agency and provides municipal checklists to use during a community event. And finally, there's a section on disaster recovery that includes resources relating to resiliency, recovery, and examples from other jurisdictions in building back communities after a disaster hits. I encourage you to check this out and also to let us know if you have resources that have been useful for you so that we can share these online. So with that, let's begin. To help us navigate the CEMP, AUMA is joined by Daryl Mahoney, the CEMP coordinator for the province. And we must remember that CEMP stands for Community Emergency Management Program. Daryl works in the field operations area of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, which is part of Alberta Municipal Affairs. Daryl will walk us through the benefits of the CEMP tool and walk us through the functionality and how to use the program. I'll now pass it over to Daryl.
Thanks very much, Jennifer, and good morning, everybody. I'm glad that you could all join us here on this, what is in some parts of the province, a very blustery day. I guess before we get started, Jennifer and I thought that as we're going through this, we should remind you that your Director of Emergency Management has been trained, or at least had the CEMP program explained to them already, and they have access or the ability to gain access. So following the webinar, if you wanted to actually see it in action or see what your community has in specifics, I would encourage you to contact your Director of Emergency Management and sit down with him or her, and they can walk you through it. And perhaps if you need be or you're involved in the emergency planning process for your community, they can get you access through their field officer. Now, without further ado, maybe we'll get going here. Just to start off, a very brief history was we did a preliminary analysis on what we were offering out to your communities here starting in April in 2013, and we did some enhancements in, based on some of the recommendations and some of the concerns and compliments coming out of the community. We went live with this new CEMP program in April of 2015, and as of currently we have in excess of 230 communities that are registered in inside CEMP and are having a look at it. Now, the overview of this webinar right now is I'll cover really briefly the history of SEMP. We'll get into an introduction of it. I will show you how the log on is accomplished using our new profile, our new platform, the MA Connect one. And we will talk a little bit how you would manage your profiles for security reasons, how you set your information sharing settings so that you can communicate with your field officer and with other communities if you set up a regional program. We will delve into the document library and what's in it and how it can assist you when you're doing your emergency planning. We will talk about the self-assessment tool where you can check your readiness. We'll talk about doing individual risk assessments on specific risk assessments to your communities. And finally, we'll go into the comprehensive emergency management plan that is in there that makes sure that all your I's are dotted, all your T's are crossed, and you've got everything looked after that you need to look after. I guess the first question here is why should we use SEMP? In our original project plan back in 2013-2014, we wanted to make available to the communities a standard-based policy-driven tool to build, evaluate, and continuously improve your emergency management programs. As new technology became available and some of the ideas came back from the communities, we kept evolving the program, and you're going to see what the latest evolution of this vision is. Now, a little bit of the background on SEMP. Originally, some of you who've been in the field for a bit will recognize similarities to the original program, which was the Municipal Emergency Management Program. It existed and it was available through MileNet. The strength to rebuilding that, it had been rebuilt once and came out as Umbrella, and we had the opportunity to upgrade it, was that there was user familiarity with that, and the original product did meet some of the community requirements based on the feedback we were getting from the communities. The weaknesses were that the delivery portal was very difficult to use. It wasn't very user-friendly or intuitive, and the technology involved in MEMP was starting to date itself, and we were getting to the point where no matter what we put into it, the technologies available just weren't going to serve our needs. So we had to look at rebuilding it from the ground up and bringing in some new technology and new capacities. SEMP builds on everything that was successful based on feedback from the communities. It included some of the new technologies. We moved the portal from the old portal to the MA Connect one, which we service and look after. It was designed from the very beginning to be very user-friendly and to be very, very easy to use, and you'll see that later on in the webinar. There is a two-way interface where you can leave messages and communicate with your field officer, and if you're organized regionally, you can actually share plans if you want to do a regional plan as well as drill down and do your individual community risk assessments. And the newer technology really enables a greater expansion and growth. I guess my analogy for this one is if you picture everything you needed to do for an emergency management plan to safeguard your community, you would be looking at about a liter of material. And MEMP and Umbrella were a 1 liter pail. So we'd fill that pail right to the very, very brim. We weren't going to be able to get anything more into it. SEMP is a 2 liter pail. So we've got everything we need in it, and we've got room for growth and expansion. So as the community start to use this, as your experts in your fields start to play with it and to make new demands upon it, we're going to be able to expand and service your needs. So it's the future. We won't be rebuilding it anytime soon, and we'll be able to keep augmenting it, and you shouldn't see anything. It should be seamless and behind the screens. Any cost savings that we would have seen in rebuilding MEMP would have been offset by the high degree of modifications we would have needed to go through with it. So SEMP is essentially MEMP 3.0, and everything MEMP did, SEMP will continue to do, and we'll be able to expand and do better. One of the earliest examples of that is we changed our risk assessment tool to the one that the United Nations is using, and the old MEMP system would not have been able to handle that without some considerable augmentation. Looking at the major features in SEMP, what we're going to be exploring here is there's a self-assessment tool in there, which is a self-guiding questionnaire. It helps you assess and maintain your effective emergency management program. If you complete it, or if you have any questions with it, or if you're working through it, it can also be reviewed by your field officer, who can offer his or her expertise as you're working through it on an individual community by community or region by region basis. Once you know where your strengths are and your weaknesses are, you're a little bit better equipped to focus your attentions fiscally, staffing, lobbying, grant seeking, and that will lead you into your risk assessments. Every community is unique. Some communities have to worry about flooding, some have to worry about blizzards. There's a series of different risks that are listed in there, hazards that are listed in there, and the template document for risk assessment is again question driven. It's specific to your community. As you answer the questions for your different risks that you have, you'll be able to assess and rank them, and they're ranked using the hazard identification risk assessment methodology. Again, that's the one that Ontario is using. The City of Calgary has adopted it. The province of Alberta is going to be moving towards it. It's one of the best tools that's out there right now for risk assessment. Finally, the third major tool is the emergency management plan. It's a wizard approach, which means it's simply guided. It prepares the procedures and equipment that you will need to use in an emergency, and it's structured and it's shareable through the emergency management context document. When you're done this, you'll be able to save this to your desktop. You'll be able to print this. You'll be able to share it electronically. It's yours to use and control, and it's only yours to use and control. It's all locked down behind your security features. So if you choose not to share it, you don't have to. If you choose to share it, you do. You can piecemeal it out. If you bring in a consultant, you can lift questions out of the emergency management plan to have them answer and then have them reinserted, or you can get them access into your SEMP identity right online and have them completed online for you. So when your consultant is gone, you can continue to upgrade and update working with your field officer. It will allow you to manage your profile, select information sharing settings, and conduct all these different assessments. And all of this is supported by a document library that's fairly comprehensive. It's got access to all the websites that you might need, all the links on the webs that you'll need, all of the ICS forms that you will need. Even currently, as of yesterday, as we're moving towards incident management teams that you'll be able to call on when in a disaster that goes on past a certain amount of time, we can bring in teams to help relieve your people. All the documents for the proto setup of IMT are now also within SEMP. So it really is a one-stop shop for the information you need to support your team in a disaster. Now, if you're a CAO or a DEM, or you're working closely with them, you're probably already familiar with what MA Connect looks like and its homepage portal. What we're looking at here on the screen right now is how you access into SEMP or any program that's on the far side of the MA Connect portal. You would simply type in your email, which is your username, and you provide that, so it's whatever one you want to use. And underneath it, you'll get initially a temporary password, but once you're in, you'll be queued to answer a couple of security questions and pick your own password. Nobody except you has access to your password. We can reset it for you, but nobody has a list anywhere of it, so it's private, it's for you only. It ensures the security of your emergency management program and all the work you do. This is the portal that you log into. So you put in your name, you put in your password, and you hit next. Once you're in, you're going to want to manage your profile. It's the drop-down box in the top right-hand corner. From MA Connect, you can put in any information in your profile to keep it current. So enter your name, if your title changes, if your email changes, if your phone number changes. You have control of that, and you can keep yourself current as we go through it all. So you can reset your password at any time, and you can set or reset your security questions. So it's very conscious of the security features that you need to safeguard yourself in this day and age. Once you're in MA Connect, this is the SEMP box. Again, if you're more involved and you're working with other programs, you'll have other boxes for the other programs in there. Today, this is the one that we're concerned about. You're looking for the four-colored circle in the Community Emergency Management Program wording underneath it. To use it, you click on it. It's that simple. We can't make it any more complex or any more secret than that. So you click on it and you'll be in. Once you're in, the first time, this is what you'll see. This is the actual home page to a brand new entry into the Community Emergency Management Program. In the top left-hand corner, you'll see City of Edmonton. That's a drop-down box that has every community in the province of Alberta in it. So you would either click on there and start to type in the name of your community, or you could search through it. It's intuitive. If you give it the first few letters, it'll find it for you. The red boxes are just an indication saying that you haven't used that tool yet. The minute you click on any of the self-assessment, risk assessment, or emergency management plan red boxes, you start a countdown, and it will track you as you go through it, so you'll know exactly how much of the process you have done. When you want to work on a tool, or when you want to work in a tool to save your work, if you hit next on the next page, it automatically saves. If you hit save, it saves, and SEMP will keep it safe and ready for you to return to it. And nobody expects you to have to sit down here and pull an all-nighter. You can answer as many or as few questions as you want. When a user returns to SEMP, you'll see the red first-timer boxes in any tool you have accessed is gone. It's replaced by other boxes that allow you to view, edit, save, or print your efforts. Anytime you do work in SEMP, it's savable to your desktop. You can print your work at any time. You can also select portions of SEMP and send those portions to other users. All the work you do in SEMP is yours to do with as you please. So this actually is a very effective tool to allow you to delegate some of this stuff. If you get into an area where it's not your field of expertise, you can select those questions out of the questionnaire, attach them to an email, and send it to your expert and ask them to review them, answer them, and send them back to you. You can then select those answers and insert them into the SEMP program. So you're not waiting for a face-to-face meeting anymore, and you can send these out for information. Managing your profile is also available once you're inside SEMP. So at MA Connect, once you're inside SEMP, you can also change all the information, keep all the information updated as you go. So if it occurs to you once you're inside something has changed, you don't need to back all the way out. What we're looking at here is the information sharing settings within SEMP. These are yours to control. They don't require any special training or any access or any security process. If you click on yes or no, it highlights that box, and that is what you are doing. And it's yours to control. No one else has your information sharing settings. So your community and the people you give access to SEMP will control this. If you click on yes, the field officers can review the documents and provide their feedback and their recommendations. If you click on no, they're not going to be able to access it, and they're not going to be able to provide feedback. Works the same with the regional setting. By opting to share your information with field officers, you acknowledge that the information may be needed to be shared with other AEMA or Alberta Emergency Management Agency staff if they have to go and find another expert when required to support a related business purpose. Any request for access to your information from outside the Ministry of Municipal Affairs will be discussed with you prior to disclosure being undertaken. This is your information. You're going to use this tool. We're not going to share this information with anybody without your authorization. The information sharing settings, a quick word on it. For example, if we were looking at the City of Lethbridge, uses the Regional Self-Assessment and Emergency Plan, then the City of Lethbridge community user will not be able to change the information sharing settings because they're set up at the regional level. So the regional person will be setting the emergency management plan. The community user will be able to view it and see it, have to make recommendations up to the regional person to make any changes. The sharing settings with field officers and regions are set by the region to which they belong. So if you're a community and your regional officer or your regional planner decides to share with the field officers, then the field officer is going to have access to whatever you could see in your community. If your regional planner decides to turn it off, then your field officer will be denied access to your information, and it will lessen his ability to assist you. Moving on into the document library. Basically, what is it? How we're going to use it. It's a searchable online library offering support. It's a one-stop shop for forms, references, documents, and links to your related emergency management efforts. All of them are maintained by you and open to your request and recommendations. There's no more needing to try and save blank documents somewhere in your office. When you need a document, look it up in SEMP, print it off, or save it to your desktop. Our staff here at the AEMA are going to keep this document library up to date. We will add stuff, we will remove stuff, and we will update stuff to make sure that when you come into SIMP, you're getting the current form and you're not messing around with outdated forms. Basically, you bring up your box, go to the search box, type in what you're looking for, or a keyword or phrase, and hit search. You can narrow your search down by selecting the category that you searched is in, or leave it broad and just use the search ribbon. The categories underneath, for example, if you were just looking for forms, you would go down and you would check the form box and then type in which form you were looking for. Or you can just use the general search form and put in the name. Either way, SIMP is going to go away and find the document that you're looking for. This is what the document library actually looks like when you've run a search. The results of your search are returned to you. You can open them. You can download them. If they are a link, you can use it right from the library. Everything in there is hyperlinked for you. The library is maintained for you, and you can come here again for all of your needs. The files link has the little green arrow on the bottom, and that's a download or openable PDF or Visio file that's in there, or Word file that's in there. And the link has a little chain link, and that will take you to a website that has the information for you. The self-assessment. The self-assessment tool is designed to assist community directors of emergency management and their deputies to evaluate the extent to which their existing preparedness plans address the unique characteristics and needs of their communities during periods of emergency or disaster. Simply click on the self-assessment tool. We'll get you started. By taking the time to answer the questions in the self-assessment, the community's strengths and areas of improvement can be identified. It can be completed by regions on behalf of the communities that represent, and once completed, you can share this information with your field officer. They can review it and they can provide their feedback to help you strengthen or review areas that need more attention. How do you do the self-assessment? Quite simply, you go to that box that we talked about in the beginning, put in your community name, it'll find it and take you there, and then you just simply click on the box to open it up and start the questions. There are questions and your short answers to them, so you can answer the questions yes or no. There's a place there for your longer answers and explanations if you want to include additional detail, data, information, or plans that you already have. SIMP will keep track of what questions you have answered and what questions you haven't. So you don't need to do this in order. You can move through it. If you're stronger at an area or later on in the self-assessment tool, you can go to that and then come back. SIMP makes sure that the answered questions are shown in bold and the yet to be answered questions are in the gray out, so you'll know where you're at and what you need to do. And there's a place in there for your field officer to offer comments, suggestions, and encouragement as you work through it. Risk assessment is the determination of quantitative or qualitative value of risk related to a concrete situation and a recognized threat or a hazard. Quantitative risk assessment requires calculations of two components of risk: the magnitude of the potential loss and the probability of that loss will occur. In doing a risk assessment, you will compile the information that you have on a potential hazard and all the information that you have on the past and present conditions surrounding it. The methodology to determine the nature and extent of a risk by analyzing potential hazards and evaluating existing conditions is the risk assessment. In the HIRA methodology, it's a 7-step wizard-based methodology. The results are used as a stepping stone for a well-informed mitigation strategy within the emergency management plan. Now, really quickly, some definitions there on hazard and risk. To read it at your leisure there, what I like to do is say, quite simply use the analogy, there's a bull in a meadow. Okay, the bull in the meadow is the hazard. Now the risk is the difference between your top speed and the bull's. If the bull is faster than you, you're in a high-risk situation. If you're faster than the bull, your risk potential is lower. So the hazard might be a blizzard. Your risk mitigation factors are how well you can plow your streets, whether or not you're domed, how much snow you've got in the past 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. And as you put this information in, the higher methodology in the risk assessment in SEMP will do the calculations for you. Now, what does vulnerability mean to your community or region? In order to build communities that are resilient when faced with emergencies or disasters, it must be first understand what is vulnerable. Now, to our knowledge, the HIRA program is the first using this methodology online. Elsewhere, HIRA remains a written exercise at this point. Now, risk and mitigation has provided train-the-trainer training to the field officers and will continue to support in the field if called upon to further expert opinion or assistance in training efforts. Now, risk and mitigation is committed to the HIRA methodology. HIRA is also used by Ontario, Calgary, and some major private contractors in Alberta. HIRA is the apparent choice for widespread acceptance and use in Alberta, and the UN is going to adopt it. It will allow the community to identify and categorize risks in or near their communities for intervention. It allows decision makers to prioritize risk reduction investments to reduce losses and damages. It incorporates risk reduction strategies into community emergency management plans, and it identifies gaps in their existing risk reduction strategies. Now, it's a predictive tool, but it's not a crystal ball. You have to remember that. This is a risk assessment. It won't predict what is going to happen, just where your attention is most likely to be spent. Now, the HIRA process is based on a combination of experience, forecasting, subject matter expertise, and other available resources. Identify a list of hazards that have either impacted your community in the past or have the potential to do so. This may require consultation with the scientific community, historical records, and government agencies. In this step, the level of risk for each hazard is examined. This may involve speaking with your experts, researching past occurrences and possible scenarios. The likelihood of the hazard occurring and the potential impacts of the hazard on the people, property, environment, business, and financial and critical infrastructures should be examined. Now, how do I do a risk assessment? Select the name for your community or region on the SEMP homepage, same as the other programs. Click on Start Assessment. In it, you'll see pre-formatted a number of different hazards that we've come up for your communities. Now, you can go through them and do them in the order in your head that you think that they should be done in. You can do them alphabetically, any order you wish to do so. As you complete them, you'll see in the top right-hand corner the level of completeness for it. When it reaches 100%, it becomes a document. That document is also saved as an appendix. So later on, when you complete an emergency management plan, all of your risk assessments will also print up when you print your emergency management plan. They're also saved when you save your emergency management plan, so you're never without any of the comments, information, or thoughts that you had on any of your risk assessments. SEMP has an extensive list of hazards loaded into it. Recognizing that no list of hazards can be exhaustive, there's also an other box at the bottom. Should you have a unique hazard that you need to assess, whether it's alien invasion, zombie apocalypse, or killer bunnies. A user then simply has to click on the steps to open them, answer the questions inside. SEMP will look after the calculations for you in the formula. SEMP has added definition boxes to help you interpret the hazard and keep all the communities and the field officers on the same page. You click on the little I, the definition that we're using for it will pop up so that you're answering the question. We're not going to worry about drift across the province as we interpret drought differently. Click on the I and I'll give you the definition for drought. You identify the hazards that affect your community through incident reports, state of local emergency declarations, DRP applications or payments, GOA ministry agencies, Alberta Emergency Alerts, Canadian Disaster Database. Do a risk assessment for each identified hazard that is specific and unique to your community. This is what the calculation looks like. This is what you would be doing by pen and pencil that SEMP has taken over for you. The risk assessment will walk you through a series of 7 steps. As you provide the factual information, SEMP assigns values and works through the formula. A community will receive a risk score for every hazard they complete in SEMP. The results will allow you to prioritize efforts, resources, finances, based on the ranking your community comes back with. Results are not intended to be used as a prediction tool to determine which hazard will cause the next emergency. The risk from all hazards that affect your community should be addressed, and not just the ones that rank high or extreme. What is the emergency management plan? How do we create it? Same way we create everything else. We go over to the left-hand side, we put in our community, and the emergency management plan comes up, we click on the red box. As defined by Section 11B of the Emergency Management Act, every community must prepare and approve emergency plans and programs to respond to emergencies or disasters. SEMP is a wizard-driven program that prompts you and helps guide you. It will ask the questions, you will complete or create the comprehensive plan. You know your community best. An emergency response plan is a plan of action for the efficient deployment and coordination of services, agencies, and personnel to provide the earliest possible response to an emergency. Working through SEMP will ensure that your emergency management plan is comprehensive. An emergency response plan is a plan of action for the efficient deployment and coordination of services. It's the earliest possible response to an emergency. The sections in SEMP include introductions, notifications, emergency services frequencies, ECC activations, initial operations, state of local emergencies, guidelines, tools, templates, administration. It's extensive, it's comprehensive. Everything that you need is there. It's savable, printable, shareable. It will always be available online through SEMP. It is electronic, so it is easier to update and keep current. You and your field officer can work on it from different locations even. These are the references that we use in creating this and preparing this presentation for you. I'd like to thank you for your attention. That's my current information. It's available in SEMP. It's available on the AUMA website, and it's available to you here. And if you contact AUMA, they'll make it available to you as well. If you have any questions down the road, you can contact me then, or you can ask your questions now. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Daryl. That was an excellent presentation and overview of all of the different stages and really an overview of what we can expect within this one program. So I encourage you to type in your questions of Daryl. This one's coming up. In the meantime, we all ask for questions. And, let's see if you can hear me. Is this better? Can you hear me now? Did somebody indicate if they can hear me? Can you hear me? Can people hear me now? Okay, great. So thank you, Daryl, for your presentation. And as people start typing in some of their questions, I'll bring forward some questions that I had as we heard this presentation. So firstly, Daryl, you had mentioned that SEMP has the capacity to be expanded, and you used the analogy of MEMP being the 1 liter bucket and it was full, and that this is now more equivalent to a 2-liter pail that has room to be expanded. And I was wondering if you could provide some insight on what are the kinds of expansions that you would envision for the future, or what kinds of things do you see will be future trends in what municipalities are doing with their emergency plans?
That's an excellent question, Jennifer. I guess the best one is to go back and do a little historical thing. We had a very simple Q&A walkthrough that was the initial risk assessment tool that was in MEMP. When we went to the higher methodology, there was a level of mathematical calculation that had to run in the back and assessments had to be given. MEMP didn't have that technological capability, and SIMP was built around it to do it. So it's, even as methodologies improve, we need to be able to expand and incorporate it. Currently in SIMP, we simply have the risk assessment tool, the self-assessment tool, and the emergency management plan. Because they're modularly based, we can pull one module down and work on it, stand another module up, we can add modules to it. We can foresee in the future, if we go to emergency social services or health services building modules, they can attach it to SIMP and keep everything in one place. With a closed system like MEMP, that wouldn't be expandable. So SIMP is expandable through modular use, and it's also expandable through increased technology as that becomes available.
Okay, thanks for that. I encourage you to type in your questions, those of you that have questions for Daryl. It's a great opportunity to pick his brain about some of the emergency management disaster recovery you're doing in your communities. So until there's more questions, I will continue asking some of the ones that I had in listening to his presentation. So I'm wondering, Daryl, you work with a lot of different municipalities as they use the SIMP tool, and you've indicated before that a large portion of Alberta municipalities have already adopted this tool. And I'm wondering if you could comment a little bit on some of the typical challenges that municipalities have had, both in terms of using the tool or in actually getting started in terms of their emergency management. And if you have any tips that you could advise them about, or any best practices that you might like to share.
Again, another really good question, Jennifer. I think being a DEM or a deputy DEM or a CAO that doesn't have a DEM, the big thing is just simply the demands on your time. Emergency management planning is often something that gets left to the corner of the desk, and it gets hard to plan for the future when you're so busy with everything going on that's happening in the present. And I think the biggest difficulty is finding the time to learn SIMP. And I think the best practice for that is get in contact with your field officer. Over email, through a phone call, this can be explained to you. It was designed to be very easy to use. We didn't want this to be a chore or requirement. We wanted it to be a tool. So the best practice for this is get in there. I promise you there's absolutely nothing that you can go in and break. And you have full support. Myself and my 2 support staff are there. We're a phone call or an email away. So don't be afraid of using it. And remember, it's not a work loss thing. If you only have 15 minutes a day, you can go in and answer a question at a time. It's designed not just to be modular, but it's also designed that it saves the work as it goes. So best practices are get in touch with your field officer and just start using the product.
Okay, thank you for that. That said, are there any municipalities that that others could look to that see what well laid out plans look like, or any examples? I know you had really stressed that there's confidentiality in terms of the inputs that were given, but have any municipalities offered their plans as examples or made them public, or is there something that municipalities could use as an example of what this will look like at the end?
I'm not sure that I can properly answer that. I know some of our bigger communities, like Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, are all very well staffed and very active in emergency management planning. they might be a good go-to resource for some of the smaller communities that have less staff or even have just one person doing DEM off the corner of their desk. And I also know that Strathcona County Emergency Management has been very active in working with the AEMA in the incident management teams, so they would probably have a lot of information that they've been kind enough to share in the past. I'm sure they would continue to do so. Other than that, again, you know who's in your region, you know who's active, you know some of the non-government organizations that are out there that are active, and you always have access to your field officer who could definitely answer your question and put you in a partnership with somebody who has the information you need, and you're going to have information they need. And it really is an Alberta community here when we're working towards emergency management planning. Fires, floods, freezing rain don't stop at anybody's border. They just sweep across everybody.
Those are good tips. Thanks, Daryl. I have one final question. And again, everybody else, feel free to include your questions, and Daryl will be happy to respond to those as well. I have a question. I guess it was from slide 18, where you had mentioned about a regional self-assessment. I'm curious as to how those regions are defined. Are they defined by the province, or can the municipality determine which municipalities that it would like to work with in terms of regional approaches and collaborative approaches to emergency management?
No, you're exactly right in the latter part of that. Within SEMP, a region is when a number of communities have decided to come together for a specific purpose, and they self-identify. They'll get in touch with their field officer. We register them in EMIS. Once they're in EMIS, they become an entity that populates over into SEMP. That group then appoints their DEM, their deputy DEMs, who they want to work on in a group. And it can be any type of a group area. Theoretically, you could put Calgary and Edmonton into a region, and they could share big city plans and information at a regional level. You could get a collection of summer villages that are collected around a lake that might have to deal with something they would put themselves in. You could find a larger town that has an experienced DEM. They're reaching out and assisting some villages and summer villages because he or she has the expertise, and they would go into a region and he would be able to write a plan for them, and all of them would have access to it. So you can also split funding that way. If you were smaller towns and you each got a little bit of a grant, you could pool your money and bring in a consultant, set up a region, and the consultant would do your self-assessments for the individual communities, and then could write a regional emergency response plan where you guys would have mutual support documentation and share your resources.
Excellent. That sounds great. Well, thank you, Daryl, and thank you, everyone, for your participation. Daryl's been a wealth of information on everything emergency management, and a fantastic resource for AUMA. So again, I'd really like to thank him for that, and for the work that he and his team do for the province. So as he had mentioned, feel free to contact Daryl if you have any questions about the SEMP. And as well, Daryl had mentioned several times about getting in touch with the field officer. We do have a link on AUMA's website under emergency preparedness, and there's a section on the community emergency management program, and you'll find a link in there that's got the link to all of the field officers and their contact information. So if you're not sure who your field officer is, it'll have it by region, and then you'll find that person's name and their phone number, email address. So I encourage you to get in touch with them. So unless there are any further questions, I'd like to thank you again for your participation. And if you would like a copy of the slide deck, just send an email to webinar. And as well, this presentation, in terms of the recording, will be included on our website in the next week or two. So thank you again, and I wish you a good rest of your day. Thank you.